Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and this is the Storyteller Forecast for Cancer for May 2016. Go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, and check out my latest blog entries on astrology and other topics. And while you're there, sign up for my free email newsletter and become part of my community. So what's going on in May? We've got so much to talk about. I think I'm just going to start with the most exciting stuff first. We have Jupiter, the great benefic, the expander, bringer of growth and luck and optimism, going direct. We also have a massive amount of trines. Trines are a sacred geometrical connection between planets. All astrology is based in math. It's a science, and science is based in math. And when we're looking at the energy of connections, it's a mathematical connection. And when there's a 120-degree connection, that is an easy, smooth, favorable connection that brings benevolence and things just handed to you on a silver platter. But because we also have this wall of retrograde energy, some of the things that may be handed to you might come from past efforts, people you know from the past, etc. So we'll get more into those details, but we'll talk about this energy of Jupiter. Jupiter is the great expander. It expands everything it touches. So when Jupiter was moving through for the early degree placements, all right, so let's break down early, middle, and late degree placements, because depending on where your placements are, these placements are in different areas of your chart. Early degree placements are from the beginning of the sign, like June 22nd through around July 2nd. July 3rd through the 12th are middle degree placements, and then the late degree placements are the ones that are from the 13th through the end of the sign. If you're watching for your rising sign, early degree placements are 0 to 9 degrees, middle 10 to 19 degrees, and late are 20 to 29 degrees. Okay, so for early degree placements, so essentially the June born and first couple of days of July, you had Jupiter starting to expand your fourth house as of last year when Jupiter went into Virgo. The rest of you still had all of that energy of expansion still in your third house. But now, since Jupiter's been going retrograde, most of you have Jupiter in your third house, except for the very late degree placements, which now it's retrograded back into your second house. So let's talk about what all this means. For the early degree placements, you would have seen expansion on the home front. Maybe you moved. Maybe you had someone move into your house, or you were living alone and then you moved in with somebody. There's the energy of expansion in the home. So sometimes that is you move to a bigger home, you move to a smaller home but feels more expanded. You know, it's the general energy of expansion, which is a subjective experience. So expansion for one person in a home might be moving out to the country, while expansion for another person might be moving to the city and having options away from a rural town. You know, so you can see how this energy of expansion as it relates to home and family is subjective in some ways, but that's where it was going. So home, family, upbringing, roots was starting to expand for the early degree placements. For the rest of the placements, Jupiter was still very strongly expanding the third house. The third house has to do with communication. Communication, writing, speaking, you know, any way that you bring information, edit information, editing, you know, so anything having to do with information. That's the house of information. It's also the house of transportation. So cars, bikes, devices that you use to communicate or transport yourself are all in that third house. So expansion might have started to come there. But then when Jupiter went retrograde at the beginning of January, you might have said, well, what is going on now? All that expansion is going backwards, and that is what it was doing. So the blessings don't go away. It's testing to make sure that everything is strong enough for future expansion. Whether you're expanding a company or whether you're expanding a home or whatever you're expanding, you have to do your studies and do your checkouts to make sure that you can handle what you're expanding into and that your infrastructure or your foundation is strong so that when the expanded energy comes, that you can manage it. And that's what this is about. So from January into May 9th is when Jupiter officially goes direct. It's like testing these weak links, testing, you know, like for instance, maybe some of you might have been pregnant or your partner was pregnant. And then some of you might have had a miscarriage. And then now when Jupiter goes direct, maybe the baby will come back again. It's like that energy. Like if there was something that your body couldn't handle for the expansion of the baby, like literal expansion of the baby, expansion of the family, it's very possible that this retrograde time between January and into May is spent finding out if there's some reason for miscarriages, if you have a deficiency or a depletion or something like that, figuring out if your finances are strong enough, figuring out what your, if your emotions are strong enough, whatever it is. That's the general story of like something seeming like it's coming and then not coming, and then in many cases, very likely coming back. Some of you later degree placements, so like the 13th through the 22nd or so, or from 20 to 29 degrees, you're having Jupiter retrograde back into your second house. The second house is the house of finances and income. Sometimes we think that we're ready to handle more income, but either it gets spent right away, like as soon as it comes in, it gets spent, and then we say, oh, and then it starts to wane, and we say, oh no, I wish I had all that money again. I would do it something different. Now Jupiter is telling you, okay, now you have a chance to do something different, So that's the energy of retrograde can be very powerful and very helpful and very supportive. And like I said, the blessings don't go away. But May is a time when expansion that seemed to have trailed off may very likely pick up again. Okay, then we've got the trines, which are the favorable angles, bringing things to you. Then at the same time, we still have information coming in from these eclipses. Eclipses are incredibly powerful astrological and astronomical events. From the astrology perspective, the energy of an eclipse starts way before the actual event and lasts way longer than the actual event. The event is several hours or so, and these timelines for change can be years in the making. When we have a larger story of, like, for instance, we just ended the Libra Aries eclipses that were going on from 2012. There were stories about relationship and self, etc., that were moving through the years, redefining relationship to self and relationship. And then when that eclipse ended, there's still a plus 4 to 6 month timeline for when it could still be bringing in information, So still in May, we're very recent into those eclipses, and more information, changes. Some people will have gotten life-shattering news or life-making news. Eclipses can bring the best of news, eclipses can bring the worst of news, and sometimes all at the same time. If you haven't already watched my March report, I highly recommend that you do that, because I'm not going to go into all of the implications of the eclipses or where they were hitting for Cancer placements, but I did in that video, and it is still relevant now. I also highly recommend that you watch the April report, because I talked more about Mars retrograde. You can also watch my Mars retrograde video and go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, and click on Mars retrograde to look at the blog. Incidentally, I also have a blog about Jupiter there, so you can see more energy about what Jupiter does in the 4th house for the early, what Jupiter does in the 3rd house for middle and some of the late, what Jupiter does in the 2nd house for the very late placements on my blog. So the more you know, the more you can maximize the use of these energies. And to me, that's what it's all about. I don't spend all of this time getting these videos to you to just tell you what's going to happen. I want to tell you the energy so that you can maximize the possibilities. Sometimes we feel so beaten up by life that we just are looking, just barely scanning or paying attention, trying to make the decision. Is it good news? Is it bad news? Is it going to be a good month? Is it going to be a bad month? That's all I need to know, And it's just not that easy to make that decision, especially if you are an empowered, conscious creator in your life's journey. We want to use these energies for our benefit and the benefit of the world. So the more you understand Mars retrograde, which is April 17th through June 29th, Mercury retrograde, which is April 22nd April 28th through May 22nd. The more you understand these energies, the more you can time your activities in ways that naturally flow with the tides. And literally, like if you were trying to get off a desert island and you were deserted on the island and you made a boat, you wouldn't wait to till the tide was coming in to lift your boat out to sea, because you're just going to get pushed back and you can paddle, 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 but you're going to be fighting against the tide. You would wait until the tide was going out. And if you were paying attention, you'd wait till the tide was going out, like on a supermoon or on, some time when it would really lift you out. That's the purpose, I believe, of using astrology, is timing your will with the natural flow of things so that things can be much easier for you. So we've got a tremendous amount of natural flow in May if you're not trying to force anything. May is not a month for initiating, for starting new things. It's not a month for trying to go out and get something. It's a month for being the spider. The spider that lives near my well has been the highlight of the horoscopes this month. I often will find inspiration in things that I see every day as I see the energy moving through life around me, with good examples of how the month that we're talking about is going to play out. So this is not an active time to go out and do something. Similar to how the spider weaves its web. The spider, in this case, would have been weaving its web in February and March when the transits were good for active, busy things. And now, the rest of April and into May, the spider sits back and waits for the food to come to him. That's what we want you to do. You've done all of this work or not, or whatever, over the course of your life or recent times or the eclipses or whatever all the stories are. Now, May is a time to sit back and see what comes in. A lot of the opportunities, the benevolence, is going to come for the early and most middle degree placements in the 11th house. The 11th house has to do with friends, social groups, acquaintances, internet-based activities, social media, teams, organizations, humanitarian efforts, and the community-minded projects. So it might be because you happen to be out that you get good news about the house that you wanted to buy, and maybe your house that you were trying to buy fell through when Jupiter went retrograde, and maybe because you're out doing 11th house things with a team or a group or an organization, you get a tip about the house, and maybe it's your house. You can see how that would work. Cancer energy in general loves to be home. Unless you have other things that are prominent in your chart, you can find a Cancer with their comforts, their things that are comfortable for them, their smells that are comfortable for them, the textures that are comfortable for them, in their routine, in their home, in the place that feels like home for them, whether it's their actual home or not. This is a month where if you have opportunities to go out, you may need to do that in order to activate your next level of expansion. The late degree placements are going to have this short-term energy still in the 10th house. What I just described about the 11th house is coming for you. It's just going to take a little longer to get there. But for May, it's in the 10th house. And the 10th house has to do with career and work and life purpose. Also has to do with relationships with father figures. I have read thousands of charts over 14 years. And I have come to see that most of the problems that people have can boil down to the fact that they have not forgiven themselves, their parents, people close to them, people that did something to them, or God. So this issue of forgiveness, in my mind, is the most powerful spiritual practice that humanity can focus attention on. And we have, as a long-term transit, Neptune, the south node, which rules karma, Neptune, which rules addictions and spiritualizing our lives, and then Chiron, which is the wounded healer, which is the place where we have that extra vulnerability and have to work extra hard to be strong. All of that is in the energy of Pisces. So it's showing that we've got massive amount of forgiveness on the list for humanity at this time, because Pisces is one of the energies I see as forgiveness. It's just release into all that is. Saturn is moving through the 6th house of health for many people with Cancer placements. Many people with Cancer rising or Cancer sun or Cancer moon have been having health or body related issues. And I talked in the last video, either March or April, about methylation, this topic that is very, very important to your health. I have some other information that might be relevant. Some of you might have the answers to your lifelong health questions or your more concentrated in recent times health questions by doing genetic testing. There is a website called 23andMe that sends you a saliva test. The test is like $200, which is a lot. And there is even more sophisticated, more expensive genetic testing. However, with this testing, you can do what it may have been taking years, and you've been spending so much money on supplements and remedies and doctors, can pinpoint where your problems are. And for many people, they're going to find that they actually have congenital defects with the normal functioning of their bodies. So you could look into the methylation and get on a methylation protocol with a professional, or you can get the genetic testing and find out if that's even the issue for you, and if not, what is. So that's going on at the same time as this forgiveness, you know? And that's part of the big messages of May. So when planets are in retrograde, it wants us to go back over things. So here Jupiter is waking up, it's enlivening some things. But Mercury, which rules the communication and transportation, is retrograde from April 28th through May 22nd. Shadow period on either side of those dates as well, by 2.5 or so weeks. And then Mars being in retrograde, this is making us go back over things. So going back over, you know, retrograde I always talk about being like the earthworm. The earthworm goes back over old ground, and it never is like, well, gosh, I really hate going over the same soil over and over and over again. Well, maybe it does. I don't know. I don't get that impression from them, right? But they're working the soil, and they make the soil fine and ready for growth. That's what these retrogrades are doing. So even though Jupiter's starting to wake up, Mercury and Mars retrograde wants you to go back over things, even if you think you went over them. You've got to do some digging during this time to get the answers that you're looking for. So if you have news or information or opportunities that come to you during this time, try to avoid signing or agreeing to anything, at least until Mercury is good and direct past the May 25th, and longer if you can possibly wait. Because Mercury retrograde and a contract or an opportunity tells us that it's either going to be short-term when we think it's long-term. If it's already short-term, that's fine. You still have to look at what you're signing and be careful, you know, that you don't get stuck with missing something. But you probably don't know the whole story. And that's the thing you really need to look out for. If opportunities come in, try to stretch out without jeopardizing the negotiations so that you can ask the proper questions so that you know what you're getting yourself into. You might be excited to say yes before you know what the whole story is. And this isn't the time to do that. This is the time to ask questions and make sure that you're clear about what you're agreeing to and all the caveats and everything that you can think of. So if you need some assistance navigating all of these transits, that some of which are supporting each other, some of which are in conflict with each other, you can go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com. I make tools, I create tools for facilitating your conscious evolution and helping you to feel empowered in your co-creating your journey, your life. While you're there, definitely sign up for my free email newsletter and become part of my community. I do a write-up for the folks on my list the month before with some more specific dates than I talk about in the horoscopes, but between the horoscopes and the write-up, it's a more complete picture of what's happening when. And I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.